We are in Brussels for ETC, and today I'm gathered with Kevin Owocki from Gitcoin. Kevin, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I only see you at ETH Denver and ETC. How did you pick these? Which others do you attend?
Well, I think ECC and ETH Denver are just special events because they've got 5 or 6 years of history, and because of that, there's just sort of a rhythm that people go to them, and so they continue to go to them. I've been to ETHCC 4 times now, and ETH Denver 4 or 5 times, and then DevCon is the other one that I'll do a lot. So I just try to pick the major conferences.
So you'll be in Bangkok.
That's the plan, yeah.
Yeah. So take me back. How did you bump into crypto? How did you decide to start Gitcoin?
Yeah. Well, I got introduced to Ethereum by my friend Piper Merriam, who at the time we were both working at a Web2 company in Boulder, Colorado. And we were just really excited and I'd say sort of nerd sniped by this idea of programmable money. What if we could program our values into our money? Could we build economic systems that reflect our values a little bit more? And we followed it for years at that time, and the startup that I was working at didn't work out. It sort of like imploded as startups can do sometimes, and I started looking for opportunities to build a startup of my own at the time, and I built a couple different open source tools that took off, and Gitcoin was my 6th side project that I tried to build in the crypto space. So lots of failures as I was exploring the idea maze of building a startup. And in 2017, I ended up launching Gitcoin and getting it funded by Consensus and Joe Lubin. And it was just clear that was where the heat was, and that's where the excitement was. And I've been working on Gitcoin for about the last 7 years, we've survived a couple cycles now, and it's been quite a journey.
How did you come up with the idea of it?
Well, I've been a CTO in VP engineering in Web2 for 10 years preceding starting Gitcoin. And one thing that I realized was that people were working on open source software nights and weekends, and they weren't really making any money for doing it. And I wanted to build a place where software developers could get coins for working on software. And basically, we built a network where software developers could earn money for working on crypto. And that was ultimately very complementary with what Consensus and Joe Lubin was doing. They have MetaMask and Truffle and all these great projects, and they're all looking to add developers to their ecosystem. And I'm the guy who knows how to recruit developers and add financial incentives to them. And so it was just very complementary with what other projects in the Consensus mesh. Joe calls his portfolio the mesh, what they were doing. So I love helping developers find new economic opportunities. And one of the things that really elates me about this space is meeting someone who says, oh, Gitcoin changed my life because I made X thousands of dollars off of it in a bear market, and that got me through it. Or you introduced me to my next career opportunity, and it feels good to open those doors for people. But yeah, lots of developers in the space, lots of money in the space, and the money is looking for developers and the developers are looking for money, and we just try to find ways to connect them.
How did it change for developers in this industry, like from that time till now?
Yeah, well, Gitcoin's had a couple different eras. In the 2017 and 2020 cycle, we were focused on a mechanism called bounties, which are basically, I would put a bounty on a GitHub issue, which is just like a bug report or a feature. And basically, if someone fulfilled the scope of that software development task, then they would get coins for doing it. And that was that was our entry into this space, and I think that it was a very exciting thing to help people find new opportunities and get paid for working on open source software. In 2019, we launched Gitcoin Grants, which is a crowdfunding platform that basically allows you to fund people who are already doing work in open source. So bounties were like, if you do X, you get Y, but grants are more like, I'm already doing X, and so support my work. And Gitcoin Grants basically has been our flagship product ever since we launched it. We introduced a mechanism that Vitalik Buterin himself invented called quadratic funding, which sort of supercharges the donations on Gitcoin Grants. And over the last 7 years, we've raised $60 million worth of funding through 4.2 million transactions to 1,000 grantees on Gitcoin grants. So it's become a substantial source of funds for maintainers who are working on open source software and other public goods in the Ethereum ecosystem.
When did you see the biggest growth for like new developers joining?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Gitcoin grants, we have these quarterly rounds starting in Q1 of 2019, and we've run 20 successive rounds from 2019 to 2024. So you can kind of do the math there, 20 rounds over 5 or 6 years, and we do them quarterly. And, in the beginning, we were seeing 200% or 300% growth quarter over quarter as people realized, wow, I can fund my work with crypto. I'm working on crypto and I can fund it in crypto. And one of the beautiful things is people in this space have such a hard time with onboarding. You have to install MetaMask, back up your seed phrase, all of that kind of stuff. But we just kind of fell ass backwards into an audience that understood that stuff because we're marketing to developers who are already technical enough to have to do that stuff. So we haven't hit any of the barriers that other people have in that sense. But yeah, it's ebbed and flowed between 25% growth and 20% or 200% growth through the years. And it's this quarterly cadence that provides this sort of expectation in the community that if you do good work, then you're going to get rewarded for it in the next upcoming round. The predictability of it is a feature in that way.
Yeah. I mean, developers being already technical makes things a lot easier.
Yep.
Is there something that they struggle with? Like the ones maybe coming from other industries?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the thing that we're all struggling in this industry is basically making tools that people outside of our own little bubble can use. So wallet UX, I think, continues to be an issue. Layer 2 to layer 2 bridging continues to be an issue that people are working on. But some of the most talented people in the world are working on these issues, and I think that we'll, in the next 10 years, solve them.
And you're working on something exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so I'm working on a couple exciting things. Maybe what I'll start with is that we've just relaunched Gitcoin. Gitcoin 2.0 just launched, and basically we originally Gitcoin was a centralized platform, and now we've relaunched it as a protocol. And basically anyone can take Gitcoin grants and build it into their ecosystem. And that's been really fun to just take what worked for Ethereum and open source developers working on Ethereum and make it available for any DAO or any EVM based community that wants to do Gitcoin grants in the form of quadratic funding, or the new hot thing in the space is retroactive funding. And we're also facilitating a lot of retroactive funding. And it's just been really a joy to be with Gitcoin over 7 years and see it evolve so much. The mechanisms have changed and some of the team members have changed, but we've always stayed true to our North Star of helping people fund what matters. The mission has always been about helping people fund what matters. And so it's been a lot of fun to see the evolution. And this latest instantiation of what we launched is called Gitcoin 2.0. And it basically has fueled a lot more growth in the 2024 cycle for us.
And the other thing?
The other thing that launched is that I just wrote a book entitled the Onchain Capital Allocation Handbook. That sounds like a mouthful, but basically capital allocation is the process of deciding where to spend your money. Mm-hmm. If you've ever reimbursed friends for a meal, then you've allocated capital. If you've ever gotten a taxi cab, then you've allocated capital. And at scale, allocation of capital is a full-time job for people in governments who need to figure out how to incentivize city services and infrastructure for them. Also, DAOs need to allocate capital to their ecosystem, to the open source software and the developers in their ecosystem. And so basically, we have this theory that capital allocation is going to be fundamentally changed by on-chain primitives, by blockchains. And the goal of the book launch, the book launch is 11/7, and we're launching it here at ECC, is to articulate the design space of how capital allocation, the process through which we distribute money, is going to be changed by on-chain primitives. And I think it's really a very exciting time to be alive, because we're in this place where our old institutions, the industrial age institutions, are sort of decaying, and we're building new coordination mechanisms, new institutions that are fundamentally internet native for our generation. And so I'm really excited for when we can take up the mantle of actually funding the world's public goods and funding collective action using crypto primitives. And we're like in the first inning, to use an American baseball metaphor. We're in the first quarter of this, and the goal of the book is just to lay out the design space of how capital allocation will be changed by on-chain primitives. And I think like one allegory that your audience could maybe relate to is the internet. The internet changed everything in society because we now have networks of computers that can send information across the network, and anything that relied on information in society was fundamentally transformed in the 90s and the 2000s by the internet. News, entertainment, media. So we didn't even have social media before the internet, right? And so the allegory here, I think, is that we now have the internet of finance, and we can send scarcity across a computer network without an intermediary. That's going to change everything in society about how we transfer financial value to each other, from jobs to investments to insurance and then capital allocation. And so I think that like there's this really open design space where we can program our values into our money. We can build economies that reflect those a little bit more. And what is that going to look like? Again, I would like return to the internet as a way of reasoning about it. If you think about the evolution of how we transferred information from snail mail to email to instant messaging to Twitter and TikTok. Can you imagine if you went back in time and tried to explain TikTok or Twitter to someone in the 1990s, they'd be like too far over the horizon that they wouldn't get it. I think that's where we are with capital allocation and like grants right now, where it's like, oh, we understand how to send money to each other very simplistically. But what's the equivalent of like Twitter or TikTok, but for capital allocation? That's kind of like what we're innovating towards. And I think the future is going to be, it's going to be weird, but it's going to be, we can do more democratic, scalable, precise capital allocation on chain and remove the intermediaries. And that's what's really exciting to me about this design space. And especially since it's so consequential, these are new ways that we're going to create collective action in the 21st century. And so that's what lights me up about the design space. The book launch is called the book is called the Onchain Capital Allocation Handbook, and you can get it at allobook.gitcoin.co. I'll send you a link so you can put it in the show notes for your audience. And yeah, just really excited to be on the weird frontier and, leverage the network and the insight that I have from working on this for 7 years, and then like take the insights from the frontier and make them available to everyday people who are just interested in Web3. And I think that that'll be my role as like a frontiersman that's taking the insights back to people. And the Allo book is one way that you can get that. Yeah,
it's obviously like something that we're all looking forward to, like to have this dynamic more at play, like just not just for us in crypto, but also like in society. Yeah. So is this like sort of like a playbook? Like what's the format?
So it's called a handbook, and the subtitle is it's a journey from present mechanisms to future possibilities. So basically, we start with things like quadratic funding and retroactive funding and direct grants and RFPs, like things that exist right now. And then we explore future possibilities, things like conviction voting and futurarchy and assurance contracts. These words might not mean anything to your audience, but they're all real things. You can look them up on Wikipedia, or you can just read the book and learn about them. But like, I think that like I wanted to make it into a handbook that was easy to reference. And, I think you go out into the woods and you'll have like a handbook of different birds that are available, that are in the woods, that helps you make sense of your environment around you. I kind of wanted to have like a book that people could flip through and be like, oh, quadratic funding, I just encountered that at Gitcoin. What is that? And then open to that part of the book and skip around as people need. So, trying to take the theory and make it really digestible and approachable, so you don't have to read the 30-page academic paper about each of these mechanisms, and instead you can just flip through and see our beautiful illustrations and explanations of the mechanisms. I think it's really important to make this content approachable for people, because they're not going to read the academic paper.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm actually curious how it looks like. Yeah. So what inspired you to, not what inspired you, let me rephrase this. What was the process of writing a book? Because this is your first book, right?
I've done a couple books at this
you've
point.
done books before.
I released in 2021. I released a book called Green Pilled: How Crypto Can Regenerate the World.
Okay.
And that was a great, exploration of taking pro-social, pro-environmental values and trying to think about what they'll look like in a crypto world. And we kind of wanted to create crypto's got different cultures, and I think that they're all great. Like, there's libertarian culture, which is all about, anti-government, taxation is theft. How are we going to, I think that that's one set of cultures. There's also the very financialized culture, the degens, the people who are working on DeFi. And then I wanted to create a little, by the way, like, I respect those two cultures and I've learned a lot from both of them, but I wanted to create a little oasis of people who are into pro-social, pro-environmental, protopian type values, and create a network of people of that on crypto. And that was the Green Pill book, which I released in 2021. And then in 2022, we released a book entitled Stuff Crypto OGs Know. And it was just like a collection of wisdom from people who had been in the space for 7 years, that if you were a new person to the ecosystem, remember 2022, a lot of people were entering the space because it was a bull market. It was basically just like showing you the ropes and the stuff that insiders know, so that you don't get rugged by an influencer or at the time,
Right.
What was the stablecoin that collapsed? Terra. Like, it basically was bottling up all of that knowledge from the frontier and giving it to people. So publishing books has been like kind of a side hustle for me for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's really cool to go to ETHCC and to be at these places and to bottle up all the wisdom and port it back to people. And I mean, in a sense, that's what you and I are doing right here too. So it's about democratizing access for me.
Yeah, no, I love that. Oh, how do you go about writing a book? Like, do you have a process? Like, how do you approach it?
Oh man, there's a quote I heard the other day. It was like, be orderly and regular in your life so that you can be violent and imaginative in your work life.
Wow, I like that.
I mean, I just like, I've been steadily working on Gitcoin for 7 years, and working at my home in Colorado, and just like obsessed with the space, and just persistently churning through building stuff at Gitcoin. And because of that, I've gotten access to, just amazing people that are really, really smart, like, PhD level economists and cryptographers and computer scientists. And like, what a blessing to have access to those type of people. And what I've found is that when you're in these rooms with these really talented people, that the moment of opportunity to you, the aperture of what we're doing here, becomes really very clear. And then from that point, like, once I have the vision sort of like crystallized, I can't help but like try to write a book about it, because I feel so inspired by what I've learned, and I want to share it with people. So I don't have a process. No, I just have like a very chaotic and violent like imagination and love for this space. And I think and that's what makes me sort of, I call it like rage writing. Like, I wrote this book within like it was years of research by being in these rooms, but it was like a month and a half of actual writing to actually put it down on paper, and then 2 weeks of editing. But it just comes from like being so inspired by the people that are around me. And I also look at my kids, and I think about the collective action problems that we've got in the 21st century with like nuclear proliferation and AI alignment and climate change and biodiversity collapse. And I just can't help but think like, wow, this is our moment of opportunity to create 21st century native collective action. Like, I need to accelerate this for the good of humanity. And so, I don't know. It's just like getting really inspired, and then channeling that energy into something productive has been my like process, quote unquote. But what a time to be alive. I mean, we're going through huge changes, and I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of accelerating into the next cycle.
Yeah, you come across like someone that really, very few people live on their purpose, and you really come across like someone that does that. So sixth idea, will there be a seventh idea at some point?
I'm sure there will be. I don't know what it is until the moment arises, and you know it when you see it, kind of thing. So invite me back in 2025 and we'll talk about it then.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. For everyone watching, where can they find you?
So I'm Kevin Owocki. It's hard to spell, but if you just Google Kevin Gitcoin, you'll find me on Twitter. I tweet everything from shit posts to new insights on my Twitter profile. And then if you Google Gitcoin, I think we're finally at a place where Google will not autocorrect Gitcoin to Bitcoin. So that's exciting. Okay. And you can find Gitcoin and Gitcoin grants through that. And yeah, come check out what we're doing. We're kind of like a little bit down the rabbit hole, but a lot of people in the space have used Gitcoin and have had impact created by Gitcoin. And so it's a great pleasure to show up and to keep innovating day over day. So hope that people will check out Gitcoin.
Kevin, thank you.
Thank you. That was fun.
Hey, what's up?
But it's not something Genzio is afraid of.
If you want to survive, you got to build a house.
I don't even know who did not understand.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Get back at the Genzio Media House.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.